will give folks a minute. Oh, I knew somebody was going to ask me what the book is. I will get it while we're on the call. And then in other news, yesterday there was an event at the Harvard Kennedy School where Jeff Liebman gave a presentation on his report. He will be joining the 9:30. He's an economist looking at early education and care. And many 9:30 callers were there. It was great to see folks in person. There was a panel that included Lauren Cook from Ellis, Commissioner Kershaw, Doug Howgate from Mass Taxpayers, and Gabby Goldstein from the Secretary's Office of Economic Development, who's also leading the work on the task force. I think the report must be available online, Naomi. I will look for it. But Jeff is coming to the 9:30 call on Tuesday. So it'll be in the invitation for next week. So we'll make sure that we get the link, Naomi. Thanks for asking that. Good morning. I see Senator DiDomenico and Rep Decker. It's great to have you both back on the 9:30 call. As we get started, I'll have both of you just tell us a little bit more about you and maybe why you decided to run for office. And we'd love to hear an update from the commission. So welcome, and I'll turn it over to, how about we'll start with Rep Decker and then move on to Senator.
I was going to defer to my elder statesman there. Happy to be here with you, Amy, and everyone else on. First, let me just say to everybody who's on this call, thank you for all of the work that you do. Really, some of the most important work is happening and needs to happen with our youngest. So it makes the work that Sal and I do, which is a lot of anti-poverty work, less needed, quite frankly, when you're more successful. So I'll just quickly say, for me, running for office was really about wanting to have a seat at the table to talk about my experiences and the community that I was raised in. That was, I grew up in public housing, first in my family to graduate from high school, and really wanted to have a role in making sure that people in government, even well-intentioned people, really actually understood the experience of poverty. And believing that more people with that experience needed to be part of those conversations and that decision making. So my work has focused on, I've done a lot of incredible work with my partner and former high school classmate, Senator DiDomenico. And the goal has been to say, how do we use this opportunity as a legislator to make sure that people are getting what they need in life, and that we're meeting people with where they're at. So that means that working to reduce poverty in Massachusetts, which we'll talk to you about this now, but also a lot of the work that I have been really fortunate to focus on has been about ensuring how are we addressing the behavioral health and the mental health needs of our families and children. And I was really fortunate to do some of this work as a city councilor when I realized that not all of our early education providers and home providers had access to the kind of appropriate support that parents and teachers need in meeting the needs of our youngest. So as a legislator, I've been able to continue this, and we've passed some really important legislation that looks to nationally for best practices, but there's more to go. And just knowing that there's a lot of things that I've worked on. Hopefully some of you know some of that, but ultimately it's just knowing that every single day as a legislator, we have the opportunity to continue to listen to the needs of people in our community, to respond to those needs, and understand that often the needs of people in our community are mirrored throughout the Commonwealth, and the opportunity every day to problem solve in partnership with many of you who are on this and people in our community. And it's just an incredible honor to do this work every single day.
Thanks, Representative. And just maybe a word about your districts, because do you represent where you grew up? Is that right?
Actually, it's funny. I represent the street that I grew up on, but the actual public housing development that I grew up on is literally like 3 houses away from my district.
Wow. Thanks. Thanks so much. We're so glad to have you with us this morning.
Thank you.
Senator.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, everyone. It's great to be out here with all of you again, and to my good friend. And I guess I am the elder statesman by just a little amount, maybe 1 year. But it's great to be with my friend Marjorie Decker, of course. So we bring that show on the road once in a while. So this is always great to be with her. If I accept to say, the one rep I work the most with on issues that I care about, since I've been in the Senate, has been Representative Decker. So there's tremendous synergy between our priorities and all the things that we work on together. So I'm Sal DiDomenico, State Senator. I represent the cities of Everett, Chelsea, and the neighborhood of Charlestown and Boston. And I have about half the city of Cambridge, where I grew up. When I first ran, I did not have my house that I grew up in my district. That has been rectified over time. So now I represent all of East Cambridge, where I grew up as well. So it's great to represent East Cambridge, where I grew up, and the city of Everett, where I now live and raise my family. And a lot of the work that I have focused on in the Senate 14 years ago when we first started, and many of you know Christy Ghetto-Young, my chief of staff, as well. So when I brought her on, which was probably the best thing that's happened to this office, and 14 years later, she's still here with me. So a lot of the issues that we have worked on together over that time have focused on children and families, focused on food insecurity, focused on lifting people out of poverty. As you know, we'll be talking about that soon. But early education and care is near and dear to my heart, because many of you heard the story that my own two boys went to Everett Public Schools and started preschool at 3 years old in our public school system. And I'm a product of Head Start myself. So early education and care has been near and dear to my heart, because I always saw, and I could validate it based on my own experience through myself and my children, that teachers in higher grades, not just kindergarten, not just first grade, second, third, fourth, fifth grade, they can tell you who has had early education in their lives. And the mixed delivery system has been, a godsend for us in the city of Everett, in terms of how all of that works together, and the synergy between, the public school systems and the providers, and taking a holistic approach and try to find ways to not just educate our kids, but wraparound services, all the things that they need to survive and to be successful as individuals and members of our society. So it has been, quite a ride. 14 years. I've never expected to run for state senate. That was not my goal. I was an Everett city councilor prior to that. I never thought I'd be a city councilor either. So this year we're celebrating 20 years of public service, which is remarkable in itself. And now my 3-year-old children are now 18 and 19 in college. So it has been great, but a lot of you folks on this call, we've worked well, with so many pieces of legislation. This is really the epicenter of early education and care, all the minds and all the people that have been advocating, and we've made tremendous progress in that space over this time. When I first got involved, they called it early education and care babysitting. And that was, we knew wasn't the case back then, but we had some, I call them knuckleheads, who were thinking that way. That has progressed over time, and we're no longer talking about access and quality. And now we're talking about how we're going to do everything for everybody, not just limit that one sector and try to find a way to do one thing better than the other. Now we can do all things great. And because of all the work that you've done, we have made that progress. So looking forward to talking about the Poverty Commission, and I'm going to kick it back to my colleague, Representative Decker.
Thanks, Sal. So Amy, did you want to just to share a little bit about the commission? I believe that's what was asked of us.
Yeah, that would be great. And just want to shout out also Ryan Telligator, 930 caller for a long time, and we know now on your team, Rep Decker.
Yeah, I am super grateful to have Ryan on my team. And I know many of you would be as well. So I'm grateful that he chooses to stay here with me right now.
Oh, and Christy, wait, Christy just came into the frame. Christy, hello and welcome.
Hello, thank you. Thank you. Sorry to
I'm so impressed that the senator is actually in the Senate office. Is this true?
It is. This is not normal. I
No,
will
it's not.
confess- I do have to confess, 9:30 in the morning is not my time to be in the State House too often. I have shocked my staff too, by the way, so.
9:30 call full of surprises. Happy to help, Senator.
So, anyway, thank you all for your interest in this and for having us on. And if you have not actually provided any testimony to the commission, I would encourage you to please follow up with both Ryan and Christy and do so. This commission this was legislation, and I think it's important to understand sort of how commissions come about. Sal and I think, have been some of the most identified legislators who've been leading on anti-poverty legislation, and there's others who as well, but this has been a part of a concerted effort with a lot of many of you who may be part of the coalition as well. And but so this legislation was not our bill. Somebody else drafted this legislation and wanted to have take a look at how would it be possible to reduce poverty over the next 10 years. And so that's what the mandate of the commission is. And we have been meeting with folks around the state and really trying to get a sense of what is the geographical diversity of need look like? What are the threads and the commonalities, and how does it differ? It's been really amazing and heartbreaking and inspiring as we are listening to people tell their stories around the state. And so the opportunity that Sal and I will have with the members of the commission is to really pull together both what we're hearing are some of the obstacles, maybe some of the root causes of poverty, and to talk about what we think the legislature could do over the next 10 years and our recommendations to address that. I will say, I think Sal probably will, well, Sal always says yes, even when he wants to say no to me. So that's one of the joys of our friendship. But I think one of the things that we both felt was this was an overwhelming task, quite honestly, because there's a lot of different ways to address and reduce poverty. There's a lot of different paths. And I think the challenge of being a legislator always is knowing that there's 200 of us who have different ideas and different priorities of how to both uplift our communities and to alleviate suffering in our communities. And we're obviously not following the legislation and passing the legislation of over 200 people every year, every session. Just want to say hi. I just saw Tom Weber. Hi, Tom. Nice to see you. So this is, it's going to be really important that you also make sure your voices are heard, that you are really talking about, from your point of view, what you think over the next 10 years would be helpful in reducing poverty. And the commission will come out with a report at the end of December, and we expect this report to live in a lot of different ways. People will use it as a blueprint to advocate for things that they have maybe already been advocating on. Sal and I will certainly be looking at legislation that we've been filing over the years and see how that aligns with some of the recommendations and whether or not we want to tweak that. And we expect that our colleagues will also use this to uplift and advocate for things that they care about. Sal, I'll hand it back to you to see what did I not cover? Sure, there you go.
You're always good, so I can just say ditto. But I'll add a couple of things there to what my friend explained as well. The commission members want to just go over, who they are and what that commission looks like, which is very important if we're doing this kind of work, that we have people who are actually working in the field, people who have dealt with this issue in the past, people who have lived experience, and also people that understand going forward the collaborative nature that we have to take on to accomplish these goals. So the commission members from the entire state, we have made sure, I'm very deliberate about that, to make sure that everyone is represented in every region of the state. We have state agencies, we have DTA, we have DESE, Early Education and Care, Labor Workforce Development, Economic Development, DPH, Elder Affairs, even DOT is part of this, because we also know that that's an important piece as well. And we also have the nonprofit organizations, which are on the ground every day doing this work, filling the gaps of government, quite frankly, and doing an excellent job with less means than they should be getting. So we have legal services, we have universities, we have researchers, CAP agencies, education providers are also part of this group, public health organizations, housing CDCs. And many of, there's some people on this call that actually are part of the commission as well, that are sitting with us, listening to testimony and doing the work behind the scenes to bring recommendations to the forefront. We have had 3 commission hearings in the state. We've had one in Springfield, one in the greater Boston area, which is in Cambridge. Then we had one in the South Shore at Dartmouth University, Dartmouth College. And we've had written testimony from over 70 individuals and organizations. And as Representative Decker said, we've had in-person testimony from dozens and dozens of folks in the field, individuals who are dedicated to this work, but also people that have lived experience, as I said, telling us what is important to them and how we can be helpful within themselves and their families out of poverty. And as was mentioned, some of it was very personal. You all know the advocating and how we get things done in the State House is those personal stories and how people are touched by them, and listening to folks on the ground. That is how progress is made. And you also know that the work that we do at the State House is dictated by the amount of uproar in the communities and the amount of advocacy and the push that's put on issues that make it to the floor of both the House and the Senate. Marjorie and I can only do so much to get what we care about to the floor of the House and the Senate. We absolutely need the advocacy and the people to push on the outside. And this group has done an excellent job in early education and care, so you know how that works. But we also need your help. This is part of the reason why we're here too, is we need your help when we make these recommendations to also give what we put forward a push, because the families that you care about and the people that are employed by you as well will benefit tremendously from these recommendations going forward and lifting everyone out of poverty and giving everyone an opportunity to succeed. So we are excited about the prospect of bringing all these recommendations and turning them to legislation, and making sure that that the work that was done and put in by so many people to get us to this point is reflected in how we have the outcome in our report. And going forward, you can be a big part of that success as well.
There is a question, and should have thanked you both initially for your leadership. And as Marjorie said, we know legislators who are often out front on the issues that we care about, and you two certainly are. So Kim Davenport wonders if you have a connection with the governor's task force on childcare. How can what you've learned and synthesized intersect with that body of work? And just so you both know, yesterday we had Naomi Meyer on, who talked about the Lift Our Kids Coalition. So this has been a great connection this week in the 9:30 call. Totally coincidental. But can you talk a little bit about, so, Sal, you just said it's about legislation, and then how do you think about, the work that's happening in the task force? And because you both are so immersed in these topics, did you hear anything that surprised you, or did commission members, what really resonated? Because I think sometimes it can feel frustrating when you have listening sessions and you wonder what's going to happen with what everyone's sharing. So maybe talk about those two things.
Really quickly, I'll address the first point, and then I'll let Sal and Marjorie address the second or both. But so Commissioner Kershaw and the acting commissioner of DESE are both on the commission. The acting commissioner, I think because it's been kind of, a roller coaster, has a designee. Commissioner Kershaw comes to every working, we split up into 3 working groups. I've been going to the working group meeting. She comes to every working group meeting herself. It's really, I think it's remarkable. She's so busy, and she has made it a point to talk about the task force and making sure that we are working together. There is another working group, a task force on shelter issues going on. Their recommendations are also due. This is emergency shelter, which is being really stretched right now. And their recommendations are due at the end of the month. We are also, Senator Kennedy is on both of those both of our commission and that working group. And so we are also coordinating with those. So I just wanted to let people know we're doing our best to make sure, you know, we're not working in silos.
Yeah, I think, Amy, what's going to be really hard, so we're going to come out with recommendations, but for the same reason that I think Sal and I felt a little daunted by this prospect, I will say I felt two things, a little daunted and quite honestly a little cynical, that, oh, we're going to put together a commission on reducing poverty, like, here we go. And it's not because it's not important. I mean, this has been my life's career, right? Nobody in this state should wake up hungry. Like, there's no reason. And nobody in the state could work a minimum wage job and afford an apartment on a minimum wage job, right? On a 40 hours, right? There is no place, the last time I checked, that can happen without some kind of a subsidy. And so what we know is that there's plenty of parents who actually can't go back into the workforce, who can't actually go back to school because they can't actually access childcare. Even if they have a voucher, they still can't actually find childcare, or they still can't get transportation to childcare, or they don't have childcare that's available for their needs of that child, that specific child, right? So I think what is going to be a challenge, but it's a challenge that it's worth like really leaning into, is there are going to be a lot of stakeholders, and you will represent some of those stakeholders, but there will be other stakeholders that will talk about, you know, which one to prioritize. And I think the truth is that in the legislature, you can pull any of these levers and you're going to reduce suffering. The question that I'm looking at that I think that this commission is charged with doing, but it's going to be really hard, is what are the things that we can collectively, 200 legislators, right? Both our chambers can say, these are the priorities. All these other things will reduce suffering, and they're really important, and they play an important role. Are there a few things that we could do, that we could agree on, that will systemically reduce poverty? Some of those things are not always palatable to people. Putting more cash into people's pockets, into their bank accounts, not everybody thinks that that's what government should be doing with its tax dollars. However, we know that there's enough data out there based on whether it's the success of the EITC, the success of what we saw families receive during the pandemic, or even the data that's come out from some of the universal basic income pilots that have happened here in Cambridge, Chelsea, being launched in Salem. We know that there's enough data that shows, in fact, when you can increase the ability for families to have autonomy and make decisions to meet their needs, which is what you need cash to do, that in fact, it is a long-term savings. It is more efficient. It has more dignity for individuals and families who just are able to contribute more when they're able to meet the needs, and in fact need less government resources when they can actually stabilize their families. So that is really going to be, and that was the cynical side of me that went, oh, great, you know, let's take on this commission. And I don't say cynical because I don't think that people don't care about that. It's just, right. And when at the end of the day, when we're doing budgets and we're talking about the incredible, the millions and millions of unmet needs in every bucket, and knowing that the state has a limit to meeting those needs with the tax revenue that we have, right? And that we're having to like prioritize where those dollars go, and knowing quite honestly that our federal government has continued to fail us, right? We have so many people coming into our state who need housing, and our federal government is nowhere to be found. And so we are taking that on, as we should, but it is coming at a cost for other things. The debate is going to be what are those other things, right? So we can I'm excited to have this commission report, and I'm really excited that we've been able to engage so many important stakeholders who already have a role in making these decisions. And I will just say that Sal and I have been really committed also, that I think that if we had written this legislation, one of the things that we would have changed was having more appointees with lived experience, not just representatives of people talking about that experience, or from a government or nonprofit point of view. So we are also working really hard to make sure that we do outreach to folks who have lived experience and are trying to figure out how to bring those voices into the report, more than just kind of a symbolic point of view. But ultimately, there will be this report that people can use And it is, I always think of these commission reports as not only a potential blueprint, but really a report of accountability. We can't say that we don't know what poverty looks like in Massachusetts, right? About, 34% of the people in our state, are experiencing food insecurity. Or, what a living wage would actually look like in order to afford a market rate rent in any of our communities. So this report's going to lay out, right, what does poverty look like in Massachusetts? One of the goals that I hope it will do is to also, when we use the standards that determine eligibility requirements, so often we know that those requirements are just kind of also, those standards are laughable because those standards, that are set at the federal level, when you put them in practice in Massachusetts, they just don't make sense because the cost of living here is so high. Cost of childcare, right? One of the highest in the state, in the country, right? So I just think that it's an important opportunity that we should all really keep leaning into, but also really figure out how to have both grace, determination, and patience, and the will to not leave the conversation, I think, is all of what's going to be required when this report comes out.
Thank you for that. And I think, when we saw the special commission on the Economic Review Commission for early ed, right, we know the legislature really worked hard with the community on those recommendations, and we have seen those, be part of the proposals that have come out. Senator, anything to add?
Yeah, and I know in the interest of time, I know you guys are wrapping this up on our end, but I just wanted just to obviously say everything that Marjorie said is correct. And that's how we've coexisted all this time together, because she is right on point. But I just want to just add a couple of things that, we take this very seriously, because we know that the people that we're tasked with helping sometimes are very cynical of government. They don't think government works for them. They don't think that anyone's listening, that their voice doesn't matter. And being in the field and going to these hearings and hearing people's stories, that obligation, that responsibility, has to be turned into action for us, not just talking about we're here to help. So our mission is to listen to those folks and make sure that the narrative about how government's not working for them, and that you've heard me say this a million times, and this coalition is made up of so many people that I work with on other coalitions as well, that the people that we're trying to help here don't have time to come advocate for themselves. They're trying to survive, right? They're working 2 or 3 jobs. They're trying to figure out how they're going to get their next meal, how they're going to pay their rent, how they're going to, pay for their medications. They don't have time to advocate for what they deserve. In many cases, don't believe that even if they did, it would work. So, Marjorie and I take that very, very seriously, and that's when our work, standing up for those who don't have that opportunity to testify, that don't believe that we're working on their behalf, that don't believe their voices are going to be heard. It doesn't matter to come and talk to us. So this Poverty Commission and the recommendations that we're going to turn into action will show people that, and again, no one knows your name, for the most part. Many people don't know who you are, your faces, your name, but they know that somebody actually is working on their behalf and caring, if they can turn this narrative around, how government is not on their side. So this is a way we can do that and show people that we are working on their behalf. And I'm excited about the prospect of getting that done.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And Christy, thank you for putting both you and Ryan's emails in the chat. We will, include, we'll put a one-pager on the resources so people can have all the links for the commission and what to do next. And we would love to have you both back kind of as you move through the process of the recommendations and thinking about the beginning of next legislative session in January. So thank you. And continue to show appreciation for them in the chat. And we will be back here on the 9:30 call on Monday. We're going to hear from Aditi and Christy on Monday. And then, as I mentioned, Jeff Liebman, who released a report yesterday at Harvard Kennedy School, will be on the 9:30 call. We are going to blog about that today, so we'll have more information about the report. And then next Wednesday, Titus and I are going to be in Springfield, Massachusetts for a meeting of the Alliance for Early Success. And we will be coming to you live from that with 6 other New England states who you'll hear updates from. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next week. Have a great weekend. Take care.